Thank you for coming to my presentation. My name is Miki Ikoma from Waseda University, Tokyo, Japan. The title of my study is Prosodic and Phonetic Aspects of Paralinguistic Utterances with the German modal particle schon in L1 and L2. In spoken German conversation, modal particles, MPs, are widely used to express various kinds of paralinguistic information, that is, speakers' intentions and attitudes, depending on different contexts. In this study, we investigate the prosodic aspects of MP schon, which can express three main intentions: conviction, reservation, and rebuttal. Here are the examples of these three main intentions with the utterance "Peter kommt schon." We use this sentence as material in our production and perception experiments. As you can see from these examples, the single modal particle schon, like most other MPs, may convey several different speakers' intentions depending on the context. In the previous studies on prosodic aspects of paralinguistic information, few focused on utterances conveying speakers' attitudes and intentions compared to studies on emotional speech. As far as concerns the prosodic properties of MP schon by L1 speakers, it has gradually become clear that in a case of rebuttal schon, longer sentence duration, a lower F0 minimum of the whole sentence, a larger F0 range, and later F0 peak timing of the accented verb, compared with the case of conviction schon, all play an important role in identifying the exact intention of the speaker. In our latest research, Ikoma and Konishi 2018, we investigated L1 and L2 German utterances, including MP schon. Regarding the prosody of rebuttal utterances compared with conviction, the results showed a longer utterance duration as a common prosodic property by both L1 and L2 speakers with experience of study abroad. On the other hand, a higher utterance F0 in rebuttal than in conviction was observed by L2 speakers without any experience of study abroad. The result from the perception experiment showed similar tendencies by L2 with the experience of study abroad to L1 native speakers of German. However, it has not yet been clarified what the production and perception of paralinguistic utterances, including MP schon by L2 speakers at the beginner level look like. Therefore, we will ask the following research questions for this study to clarify the prosodic aspects of paralinguistic utterances with MP schon in L1 and L2. First, what are the common versus language-dependent prosodic properties in paralinguistic utterances using MP schon by L1 speakers of German and L2 learners of German at the A1 level? Second, are there any common versus language-dependent properties in the perception of utterances with paralinguistic information using MP schon by L1, L2 speakers and non-learners? To answer these questions, we conducted production and perception experiments for both L1 speakers and Japanese L2 learners of German using utterances including MP schon. The perception experiment was also conducted for Japanese non-learners in order to compare the results with L1 and L2 speakers. First, we would like to explain the experiments in perception. The subjects, L1 native speakers and L2 Japanese learners of German, are as you can see on the screen. As a further control group, 18 Japanese non-learners of German also took part in the perception experiment. As the perception test was conducted for L2 speakers in June 2019, the L2 learners had been learning German for only 2 months at the total beginner level, as they had all just begun to learn German in April 2019. They learned with the same textbook mentioned A11. The word schon has been introduced not as an MP but only as a temporal adverb meaning already. As listening stimuli, the recorded utterances of the two short sentences in our production experiment, Peter kommt schon, Peter will come, and Peter kommt schon zum Unterricht, Peter will come to the lesson, by L1 speakers of German were used for the perception experiment. In the first sentence, the position of MP schon is at the end of the sentence, while in second, MP schon is located in the middle of the sentence. According to our latest study, 3 different contexts corresponding to the 3 major kinds of paralinguistic information, conviction, reservation, and rebuttal are created for the 2 sentences. In figure 1 in my paper, you can see the context of the short sentence Peter kommt schon embedded in the situation of rebuttal. A perception program was developed by means of PLAT so that the subject could listen to the randomized stimuli 3 times in total. In terms of procedure, the subjects listened to the stimuli one by one through headphones connected to a PC. Then the subjects decided which of the 3 given intentions of the utterance sounded most appropriate for. In each section, the subjects listened to 270 stimuli in total. Second, we'll explain how we conducted the experiments in production. The subjects, L1 native speakers and L2 Japanese learners of German, are, as you can see on the screen. The same sentences as in our perception experiment, 2 short sentences containing MP schon. First, Peter kommt schon, and second, Peter kommt schon zum Unterricht, were used in the experiment. As in our perception experiment, 3 different contexts corresponding to the 3 major kinds of paralinguistic information are created for the 2 sentences. We adopted the same procedure as in our previous studies. In terms of measurement, prosodic properties such as duration, F0, and intensity of the whole utterances in the accented syllable were considered in the acoustic measurements. Also, as a new variable in this study, we considered the F0 range, or from F0 peak of the accented syllable to the end of the utterance. Furthermore, we also measured the F1 and F2 of the accented vowels in the utterances in terms of vowel quality. Because my time is so limited here, I will go through this in the next 2 slides very quickly. They are important because they show my results, but you can look at them in more detail by yourself later, and that will give me time for the discussion and conclusion. This figure shows the percentage of answers in the perception experiment. For the detailed data, please look at Table 1 in my paper. The results from the statistical analysis show the percentage of correct answers in conviction and reservation was significantly higher in L1 than in L2 learners and non-learners. But in the case of rebuttal, significant differences in the percentage of correct answers were found between L1, L2, and non-learners. On the basis of the results from the perception experiment in L1, a limited number of utterances were picked up where the percentage of correct answers showed more than 70% by L1 subject. In the following results from the production experiment, we compared the prosodic properties of the well-identified utterances by L1 with those of the utterances by L2 Japanese learners of German. This table shows the results from the statistical analysis of the measured variables, comparing the 2 intentions, conviction and rebuttal. In the places marked in yellow, we observed language-dependent, that is, different prosodic properties between L1 native speakers and L2 learners of German. Pitch in the whole utterances and intensity showed language-dependent properties. In the other places, we found common prosodic properties between L1 and L2. That is, in the utterance duration, the duration of each syllable, and the pitch values of the accented syllable. These variables are, in the case of rebuttal, significantly larger than in conviction. These figures show the results of vowel quality in the utterances spoken by L1. Vowel F1 and F2 of the accented vowel O in the verb kommt were significantly higher in rebuttal than in conviction spoken by L1. In L2, vowel F1 of O in MP schon was significantly higher in rebuttal than in conviction, but no significant difference in vowel F2 of O was found. Please see figure 3 in my paper. In accordance with the results, we'll try to answer the research questions. First, regarding common prosodic properties by L1 and L2, the duration of the whole utterance and the pitch properties of the accented syllables spoken by both L1 and L2 seem to have common functions in distinguishing the paralinguistic utterances between rebuttal and conviction. In the vowel F1, we found similar results both in L1 and L2. The vowel F1 of the accented syllable was in both L1 and L2 significantly higher in the case of rebuttal than in conviction. This result suggests that the vowel F1 is one of the common phonetic properties regarding the speaker's attitudes of rebuttal. Second, we also found language-dependent prosodic properties by L1 and L2. In L1 utterances, the maximum pitch was significantly lower, while the maximum intensity was significantly higher in rebuttal than in conviction. In L2 utterances, on the other hand, the mean pitch was significantly higher in rebuttal than in conviction, while the intensity maximum was lower in rebuttal. As for the perception by L1 and L2, the percentage of correct answers in conviction and reservation was in L1 significantly higher than in the L2 groups. But especially for the perception of conviction, the overall tendencies of answers appear to be similar among the three subject groups, L1, L2, and non-learners. It should also be noted that L1 native speakers and L2 learners of German answered the utterances in the most case of rebuttal more often correctly than non-learners. This suggests that some kinds of paralinguistic information, such as rebuttal, show language-dependent properties, which can be gradually acquired in learning German as a foreign language. I'd like to summarize our study. First, in this study, we investigated prosodic aspects of utterances with MP schon spoken by L1 native speakers and L2 Japanese learners of German. Second, in the production experiments, we observed both common and language-dependent prosodic properties. Third, in perception, conviction and reservation were identified more correctly by L1 than in the L2 groups, but the overall tendencies were similar among the three groups, L1, L2, and non-learners. But rebuttal was identified more correctly by L1 and L2 than by non-learners. We suggest that there are language-specific aspects in rebuttal that can only be perceived through competence in German. I'll introduce examples of utterances of conviction and rebuttal by L1 and L2 speakers. First, I will show the examples spoken by one German native speaker, L1, together with the pitch curves of the utterances. First, I'll show the example of conviction and then rebuttal.
Peter kommt schon. Peter kommt schon.
Next, I'll show examples spoken by one Japanese learner of German, L2, together with the pitch curves of the utterances. First, I'll show conviction, and then rebuttal.
Peter kommt schon. Peter kommt schon.
If you have any questions or comments, please send me an email. Thank you for visiting my presentation. Vielen Dank. ありがとうございました。